What a great time to be a Giant, be a fan of the Giants.
Like, we have something going here. We're building something special, and, you can see it from the outside and inside. It's even more beautiful.
Reflecting on everything that got me here, just to see that uniform, and, I watched, that's the team I watched the most growing up because my dad was a Giants fan, so.
Once a Giant, always a Giant. For me, it's only a Giant.
Welcome, everybody, to a special edition of All In with Art Stapleton, a New York Giants podcast brought to you by NorthJersey.com and The Record. I am your host, Art Stapleton, and you can exhale, Giants fans. Finally, you not only got in the end zone as an offense, twice, in fact, in a matter of 5 minutes and 20-something seconds. For the first time since week 2 and that historic comeback against Arizona, you're on the winning end of a performance here. First time all season at MetLife Stadium. 14-7 the final score. And boy, it's something about Washington and the Giants for a legacy game. And these throwback uniforms, the throwback field, with all the bunting in the stadium, trying to harken back to the old Giants stadium. This defense kind of made those defenses a little proud today. I think Dexter Lawrence said it best. The idea of, I hope they would be impressed with what they were able to do. Now, the Giants defense at this point was going against Sam Howell and the Commanders, and I still don't know why Washington refuses to run the football with Brian Robinson Jr., but that's for another day. The reality is that every time the Giants needed to respond, they did today. And there were a lot of plays that had they come up short at the end of this game, you would have looked back on and really felt terrible about if you're a Giants fan and the Giants. Kayvon Thibodeau had an opportunity for a potential pick 6, let the ball slip through his fingers. No interception. Then Sterling Shepard muffed that punt. Now, that's as much on Shepard. Yes, you got to make the play. You're paid to make that play. But he's also been put in a very difficult situation. Early on, Eric Gray, the rookie, as a punt returner, muffed a punt. The Giants talked all week on how it was going to be difficult in the swirling winds today, and it definitely was true. It was probably seen most on the punt returns. Then Graham Gano missed a field goal early on into the direction that seemed to be swirling most, especially for the first half of the game. And it was real. And then you have Tress Way, who is an excellent punter for Washington. He's been that going since the Tom Coughlin days. Coughlin used to always talk about Tress Way when he went into his diatribe every week about the upcoming opponent. But Sterling Shepard, the second punt returner up after Gray muffed one early. The Giants got that one back. Shepard muffed that punt in the beginning of the third quarter, really gave life to Washington. They end up scoring with Robinson Jr., and then 14-7 is the final score. But you talk about what this team was able to do without Daniel Jones again, and give Tyrod Taylor a credit. That's why he's here. I don't want to hear about a quarterback controversy. Daniel Jones plays against Washington today, and I know it's difficult to say, but, this is the get-right game for Daniel Jones. Washington has always been the get-right game for Daniel Jones. But give Tyrod Taylor credit. This offensive line, the left tackle, Justin Pugh, 2 weeks ago was out of football. The right tackle, Tyree Phillips, was in Philadelphia for the first 6 weeks on their practice squad, not with the Giants. The Giants essentially told him twice that he wasn't good enough. They cut him in the original cut down to 53, and then they cut him from the practice squad. Guys are mixing and matching up front. Marcus McKeithen moves from right guard to left guard. Ben Bredesen still playing center for John Michael Schmitz. Mark Glowinski went back to right guard. And against this Washington defensive front, you got to give them a lot of credit. But truly, this defensive performance is really what you need to know, and resiliency. Bobby Okereke told me, resiliency wins in this league. And for the first time since that second half in Arizona, the Giants backed up their words. They've always felt like they were a resilient team, but when push came to shove, they were the one getting shoved to the ground until today. We saw what happened last week against Buffalo. They left it to chance. No flag on what was clearly defensive pass interference against Darren Waller at the goal line. So the Giants had to suck it up and leave Buffalo without the upset win that they really earned and deserved. You see what happened at Buffalo today up in Foxborough, losing to New England. The Giants kind of tuned them up a little bit for the Patriots. But this game came down to several big plays made by the Giants. And one of those is rookie Tay Banks. I mean, he traded punches with Terry McLaurin, figuratively, not literally. And he gave up some plays. McLaurin is an outstanding player. But in the fourth quarter, when they were going down and trying to score the tying touchdown the first time, McLaurin runs an underneath route, a crossing route, and you could see Tay Banks from our view up in the press box was beaten by about a half a step. So McLaurin makes that play, and it was on a third down, and he tackles him 5 yards short of the sticks. And years past, I can say this with confidence, I don't know if there's a corner that the Giants have had since Terry McLaurin's been in Washington that would actually have made that play that Banks made. We've seen too many times Giants corners kind of put their heads down when plays get made against them. That was not how Banks played today. And Banks just showed his toughness and his resolve. He makes that tackle, and the reason why it was such a big play is that on the next play, fourth down, Washington decides Riverboat Ron continues to go against the reputation that he earned down in Carolina, and they end up kicking a field goal. That was a chip shot. And Leonard Williams blocks the field goal. And that was a huge swing. Then we come down, wasn't it familiar? Sunday Night Football in December last year, down in Landover at FedEx Field, Washington driving to try to get the tying score in a game that both teams needed. And that night, it was Curtis Samuel in the end zone, and Darnay Holmes broke up the play, but everyone watching it knew at some point it probably should have been pass interference on Darnay. This time, it was clean. Giants were aggressive. They came out in zero coverage. Wink Martindale wouldn't have had anything less. Sam Howell rolled a little bit, fired behind Jahan Dotson right at the goal line. Jason Pinnock was closing fast on the play. And had Dotson caught that ball, even if he doesn't get in the end zone, it's first and goal at the 1. And the ball falls incomplete, and the Giants take over. Couple kneel downs from Tyrod Taylor, and the Giants win 14-7. Dexter Lawrence was dominant today. Kayvon Thibodeau with a sack and a half. Lawrence had 8 pressures in the game, just dominated Nick Gates. It was good seeing old friend Nick Gates. When he arrived at the stadium, he walked past the Giants locker room, stopped, ducked into the equipment room, said hello to old friends. And then when, at some point in the game when Xavier McKinney was called for a personal foul for hitting a defenseless receiver, which is always going to get called for a safety. Safeties cannot play that ball anymore and end up hitting the receiver. It's just not going to happen in this league. They're not going to allow you to make that play. And Gates had a problem with it, kind of ran up to McKinney, went face mask to face mask. That fire from Gates, a lot of people, including myself, said, you know what, the Giants have been missing that. And, they had that fire today. And yeah, you can sit here and you could point to a lot of plays and say that was ugly football. At times, it was definitely ugly football. But this team can't worry about style points. They are now 2-5. And you can say woulda, coulda, shoulda, all these things that should have happened. Winning this game kind of gives you a little reset. And now you get ready for the Jets this week. Gives you some juice. The way this defense has played the last couple weeks, you got to think that they're going to give the Jets a hard time as well. Now, this Giants offense, will they get back Daniel Jones? Certainly sounds like that's what the Giants expect. And as I've said, you know what you have in Tyrod Taylor. Daniel Jones is your starting quarterback, so you'll have to see how that plays out. But I do think that if Jones is cleared for contact and healthy, he will start. I think there's a chance that Andrew Thomas comes back this week. I know Adam Schefter had a report early Sunday morning, but that's really what we've been saying all along. The Giants were trying to be extra cautious. He had a setback in practice, but only because he ended up coming back too soon. Now they wanted to take that extra week to get Thomas ready. I think Thomas comes back. I think Justin Pugh will then kick inside to left guard, which will make them better at left guard. Then you have to see if Evan Neal can come back from his ankle injury. If not, Tyree Phillips will play there. Look, this Giants offensive line gained something today against that defensive front of Washington. Those guys aren't any slouches. I mean, that's a top 5 defensive line in the league when they're going well. And Chase Young, gave Pugh some headaches today. There's no doubt about it. But I think back to when Pugh said earlier in the week, there are going to be plays that he fails to make as a player. He's trying to come back. He's battling. 2015 is the last time Justin Pugh was at left tackle. And he not only went against the Buffalo Bills last week, but now he goes against Washington, and Chase Young got him for 2 sacks today. Although one is probably against Pugh and the other one is against nobody, because the Giants had a play-action pass called for Tyrod Taylor to roll out to Chase Young's side, and nobody was there to block Chase Young. So, I know there's a lot of talk of how much control Brian Daboll was going to have this week, and, there was a report from Pat Leonard of the Daily News, the idea on Sunday morning that Brian Daboll was involved in everything, in meetings. He was leading offensive meetings. And I thought Darren Waller's response when he was asked about that was perfect. And I typed it on my phone at the time, so I'm going to call that up before I close out today's post-game pod. And he said it was on the intensity that Daboll showed this week. And Waller said, should be that way. Can't let things slide. I'm actually surprised Daboll didn't do it sooner. This team was skidding into nowhere. And as I wrote in my column on NorthJersey.com, and hopefully you guys will read that, I put it out on social media as well. The reality is that this was a season heading nowhere. And it may still end up in that same destination. We're not sure what's going to happen over the next couple weeks. They play the Jets. We know how badly both franchises are going to want to win that game. We know the Jets are coming off their bye after beating the Eagles. They're going to be flying high. And the Giants are just kind of scraping by. I mean, that's really what it is. But weird things happen in this league. And I said it a couple weeks ago. The Detroit Lions last year, after the trade deadline and the first week of November, were 1-6. And they ended up as the hottest team that nobody wanted to play. And they were fortunate, the rest of the NFC, that Detroit didn't make the playoffs. Now, I'm not predicting that for the Giants. They may not win another game this year. But I'm just talking about the NFL and how one game could kind of change everything for teams. And this was not pretty. This was a throwback in many ways. But the Giants got it done when they needed to get it done. And, we can talk all about what they didn't do, but what they did do is finally get a win. And you know what? If they had won a couple of those games ugly, we wouldn't be sitting here talking about saving the season at 2-5. And I don't know if they've saved the season necessarily, but they've certainly saved the next week, because there's something to play for now against the Jets next weekend. And it'll be entertaining to see how this week takes shape. 2-5, that's where you're at. You didn't expect to be there, but the Giants have a little life left in this season. We'll see if it carries through to Halloween, and to Halloween